Well, today we'll be doing Notre Dame. So Notre Dame is getting a lot of hype going into this season. They're ranked in the top 10 everywhere you look, and I've even seen them as high as 5. And I have them ranked number 9 in my top 25 right now. I think they're going to have a really good team. And the thing about Notre Dame for so long has been they're a program that usually has a good team, but never has a great team. Now, I know they've had a few 12-0 seasons, but that was because of an easy schedule. And they've lost 11 big bowl games in a row and can't win any big games, not even in the regular season. They've lost uh, mm, those 11 bowl games that were all either New Year's Six bowl games, playoff games, and even one national championship game. And uh, they've played Ohio State these last 2 years, who has been a really good team, and they lost both times. But now I will be talking a little bit about Notre Dame's head coach Marcus Freeman, and then I'll talk some about their roster, and then I'll go through the schedule game by game and give you a predicted winner and loser for each game. So Marcus Freeman is entering his third year as the head coach of Notre Dame. And his second year, I think, was much better than his first, even though it was only a one-game improvement in record, 10-3 the second year and 9-4 the first year. In the second year, they didn't have any crazy losses, which they had two of in his first year there. And they played Ohio State down to the last second, who was a really good team, only losing to them by 3 points. And he's been a good recruiter since he's been there. Notre Dame just had the number 9 recruiting class in the country, and he has put together a really good coaching staff. So LSU's offense was the best in the country last year, averaging over 45 points a game. Well, the offensive coordinator from that offense last year is now at Notre Dame as their offensive coordinator. And Notre Dame keeps their defensive coordinator, who called plays for a defense that was one of the best in the country last year, allowing only 15.3 points per game. Uh, and so now moving on to the roster, uh, starting on the offensive side at quarterback. So I know Sam Hartman was a disappointment last season. Didn't have the year he was expected to, but I don't think that was really his fault. He is a proven good quarterback. He showed that at Wake Forest. The problem was Notre Dame's wide receivers were so horrible that he didn't have big numbers. They were so bad at wide receiver last year that their leading receiver was their tight end who missed nearly half the season, who is really good, and I'll talk more about him in a minute. But that's been a problem for so long with Notre Dame. They haven't had any wide receivers that could scare anybody. Now, you can tell me in the comments that they've had a bunch of Marvin Harrison type receivers, but that's not going to make it true just because you say that. And so now they are bringing in another transfer quarterback, Riley Leonard from Duke, who I think overall is a good quarterback. He's not the most accurate pocket passer. I think Hartman was a better pocket passer, but what he has that Sam Hartman didn't have is a whole lot of athleticism. He's really good at making big throws when under pressure, and he's a really good runner. I remember watching him against Clemson last year, where he just kept making big plays to where they eventually blew out Clemson. And he got hurt a few weeks later with an ankle injury, to where he wasn't the same after that last season and missed a lot of time last season. But I saw he had ankle surgery and is expected to be ready for the opener this year. And in 2022 at Duke, he was the starter all 13 games and had nearly 3,000 yards passing and nearly 700 yards rushing. And he had a 63.9 completion percentage and had 20 passing touchdowns and 13 rushing touchdowns, and he averaged 5.6 yards per run. Uh, so, and at wide receiver, I think they're going to be better here because they brought in two good wide receivers from the transfer portal. They brought in uh, Bukes Collins, who was Clemson's best wide receiver last year, played in 10 games and had 38 catches for 510 yards and three touchdowns, averaging 13.4 a catch. And then they also bring in a really good wide receiver from Florida International, Chris Mitchell, who had 1,118 yards and 64 catches, averaging a really impressive 17.5 a catch and seven receiving touchdowns last season. So I think this could be one of the best wide receiver units that Notre Dame has had in a really long time. Those two wide receivers will no doubt be starters this year. And they returned Mitchell Evans at tight end, who was one of the best tight ends in the country. Only played in 7 games last year, but in those games he had 29 catches for 422, and he had a touchdown catch and averaged a really impressive 14.6 yards a catch. And at running back, they do lose their starting running back who was really good, Audric Estime. He's is going to have a long career, I think, in the NFL. One of the best running backs last season. He averaged over 100 rushing yards a game. But Notre Dame used several running backs last year, and they switched out constantly during games. And the other running backs are back, and they're good too. They've got Jeremiah Love, who only had 71 carries last year, but had 385 yards and a touchdown, averaging 5.4 a carry. And they also have Jadarian Price, who only had 47 carries, but had 272 and three touchdowns, averaging 5.8 a carry. Uh, so this Notre Dame offense, I think, is going to be a lot like it has been in the past. Running the football mostly and loving to throw it to tight ends. But I think they're going to have a little bit more of a passing game than they've had in a really long time. And then the offensive line is more questionable than it has been in a while. I think they lose three starters, including first round pick Joe Alt, but they returned both starting guards. They returned Rocco Spindler and Pat Coogan. Uh, Spindler played in 10 games and only allowed 12 pressures and two sacks. And Coogan did struggle some last year, allowing 33 total pressures. But their offensive line is full of other talented offensive linemen who just aren't proven in college yet. But this position has been a strength for Notre Dame for so long that I don't doubt that they're going to have a good offensive line. And on the defensive side, this is going to be one of the best defenses in college football again. They have three of the best defensive players in the country. They've got Howard Cross on the defensive line and Xavier Watts at safety and Benjamin Morrison at cornerback. Xavier Watts is probably the best of all three, but starting on the defensive line, Howard Cross last year had 66 tackles, two sacks, and 36 total pressures, and two forced fumbles and two pass breakups. And they've also got Riley Mills, who had 47 tackles, two and a half sacks, two fumble recoveries, and 27 total pressures last season. And they've also got Jordan Bodcola, who had 32 tackles, 18 total pressures, and four sacks last season. And they bring in a good defensive lineman from Duke, who had in 3 years there 62 tackles, 14 sacks, and 91 total pressures. So this defensive line is going to be elite. I think it will be a top five defensive line in the country. And then at linebacker, they are loaded with talent at that position. They're just not real experienced. They have Jack Kisser returning, who made only 3 starts but played in every game last year and had 62 tackles and 1.5 sacks, an interception, and 11 uh, uh, pressures total. And they have a 4-star linebacker, Jalen Sneed, who played in all 13 games but wasn't a starter and had 14 tackles, 6 total pressures, a sack, a forced fumble, and 2 pass breakups. He'll probably be a starter this year. Uh, and they also have another 4-star, Drake Bowen, who wasn't a starter last year, played in 12 games though, and had 14 tackles, a forced fumble, and uh, was a freshman last year. He'll probably uh, move to a starting linebacker this year. And they've got Jaden Osbury, a 4-star linebacker who should get more playing time this year after barely playing last season. And they also have a top 50 overall recruit coming in, Kingstone Voluma Asa, who I saw could get immediate playing time at linebacker as a true freshman. And then in the secondary, Xavier Watts is for sure a top 4 safety in the country. Lindy Sports Magazine has him listed as the best safety in the country. Now, I disagree with that. I think that's obviously Caleb Downs, but uh, him and Xavier Watts and Oklahoma's Billy Bowman and Georgia's Malachi Starks, those are the 4 best safeties in the country, in my opinion. And Xavier Watts is a for sure first round pick next year. He had last year 52 tackles, and he led the country in interceptions with 7, and he had 4 pass breakups and uh, a forced fumble and fumble recovery. And then the other starting safety will be a transfer from Northwestern who is really good, Rod Hurd, who had 85 tackles, 4 pass breakups, and a sack, an interception, and 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery last season there. So they're in really good shape at safety, at least with the starters. And then at cornerback, Benjamin Morrison had in 25 games these last 2 years, 64 tackles, 9 interceptions, and 15 pass breakups. And the other starting uh, cornerback is expected to be a transfer from Arizona State, who is good. Jordan Clark, who had in 11 games last year, 50 tackles and 9 pass breakups. And they have 2 other young, very talented cornerbacks who didn't get much playing time but should get more this year and help them out there. And then on special teams, they lose their punter and their kicker, but they should be better at kicker this year, bringing in a really good kicker from South Carolina. His name is Mitch Jeter, who made 23 of 25 field goals there. So now moving on to the predictions. They start the year against Texas A&M on the road. This will be a really close game, I think. I think it'll be not real high scoring, but I think both teams will score into the 20s. Texas A&M can match Notre Dame with talent. They've got a whole lot of talent on the defensive side also, and they've got several good wide receivers, and their quarterback returns, and they've got a great group of running backs. Now, Notre Dame is better at the offensive line, I'm pretty sure. But this game is interesting because Riley Leonard, the new Notre Dame quarterback, will be going against his old head coach, Mike Elko, who, is now the head coach at Texas A&M, but was the head coach at Duke these past 2 seasons. And I think that with this game being on the road at Texas A&M, Texas A&M wins this game. Uh, and Texas A&M right now is actually a 1 point favorite in this game. I saw, but Notre Dame will have a really good chance to win this one. I think they're overall the better team than Texas A&M, but the better team doesn't always win. Uh, and then they play Northern Illinois. This will be a huge blowout. And then they play Purdue, which will be a real easy win. A horrible team. This will be a blowout. And then they play Miami, Ohio, another really easy blowout win. If this was like Cincinnati or Colorado, of course, it wouldn't be a sure win, but Notre Dame is much better than Cincinnati and Colorado. And now they play Louisville, a revenge game. Louisville beat them by 2 scores last season, but this is at home now for Notre Dame. And I think they are the better overall team. Now, Louisville it does have a pretty good roster, uh, but I think Notre Dame gets revenge on Louisville in a close one, uh, probably just by like a touchdown. Uh, and then they play Stanford, a team that will be fighting to avoid last place in the ACC, which is already terrible this year. So this will be an easy win. And then they play Georgia Tech. This will be played in Atlanta, but it won't be played at Georgia Tech Stadium. Don't ask me why, because seems to me like college football games should be played on college campuses, but Georgia Tech's offense is going to be similar to Notre Dame's with the way they run it. They were going to want to run the football a whole lot, and they have a quarterback that likes to run it and is also a decent passer. And they've also got a couple of good wide receivers. But Notre Dame's got a better line, and Georgia Tech doesn't have a tight end like Mitchell Evans, and I think Riley Leonard is a better quarterback than Georgia Tech's, and I like Notre Dame's defense much better. So I think Notre Dame wins a close one, probably like 8 points. And then they play Navy, which will be a huge blowout. And then they play Florida State at home. So Florida State is not going to be as good this year. They have a huge downgrade at the quarterback position, and they don't have the wide receivers that they had last year. And I like Notre Dame's defense even better, even though Florida State I think is still going to have a really good defense. So I think Notre Dame wins this one. Uh, it's pretty close, I think, but I think they win by about a touchdown. Uh, and then they play Virginia. Them and Stanford will be fighting, I think, to avoid last place in the ACC. So this will be an easy win for Notre Dame. And then Army, another easy win, huge blowout. And then they play USC on the road in the rivalry game. So this will be a big game if my predictions come true for 2 reasons for Notre Dame. One is it's a rivalry, and number two is that they'll only have one loss at this point, and if they can win this game, they'll for sure go to the college football playoff. And USC is being counted out of being able to have a good team this year, or well, not being able to have a really good team. They might have a good team I've seen, but I've seen that because they didn't have a very good year last year and are losing Caleb Williams, that they're not going to be great this year. But I disagree that they can't have a great team this year. I think they can. I look through their roster and they're not real deep, but their starters are really talented overall. And do you really doubt that Lincoln Riley is going to put anything short of a great quarterback out on the field? I don't. And Miller Moss, the new quarterback there, has already shown how great he can be in the bowl game last year. And I do like Notre Dame's defense better, of course, with coaching. But USC has a lot of talent on that side of the ball. And then offensively, I think that USC will have the better quarterback, and uh, run game may be Notre Dame being a little bit better. But USC is going to have several wide receivers that are good. And of course, Notre Dame is better at the line of scrimmage. But I actually think that USC pulls the upset here. And so my final prediction for Notre Dame is 10-2. So I think that Notre Dame probably wouldn't go to the college football playoff if this prediction comes true, because this is a very weak schedule, and I have them losing to Texas A&M. And you saw, if you watched my post-spring top 25 video, that I think Texas A&M is going to have a good team this year, but you also saw that I think that they're nowhere close to the top of the SEC, and the SEC is no doubt going to have a lot of playoff teams. And if Notre Dame is having a loss to Texas A&M, it's not going to look good for them. Now they could make it. I just doubt it, and uh, they could possibly go 12-0 because I think Notre Dame has a better roster than everybody they play this year. But it is hard to go 12-0, and teams lose games a lot in college football that they're not supposed to lose. And you can type in the comments that I just hate Notre Dame, and that I'm mentally ill, like one of Coach Prime's lover idiots told me a few days ago. But I'm an Ole Miss fan, so I have no reason to hate Notre Dame. They don't even play each other. And so that will be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back very soon.